biggest trade deals in the world that we've just done with the USMCA. It's a very big trading partner. But to me, trading is very important. The borders are very important.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen tells Fox News the U.S. is responding to the immigration problem as if it were a natural disaster.
We're now treating this like a massive Cat 5 hurricane disaster. We are bringing all of the interagency together. We're asking everybody to chip in. We need to surge down as many resources as we can to the border. But Congress needs to look at this as a hurricane, too.
Democratic and Republican lawmakers, economists, and business groups warn closing the border could cripple the flow of goods and jeopardize 5 million American jobs. Chicago elects its first African-American mayor, who's also the first openly gay leader. Lori Lightfoot pledges to end corruption at City Hall.
They're seeing a city reborn, a city where it doesn't matter what color you are, and where it surely doesn't matter how tall you are.
And the former federal prosecutor admits she is diminutive in size, but not determination. She says she'll make sure the cities forgotten are included. And the election for a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court may be headed for a recount. The conservative candidate holds a slim lead over the liberal-backed rival. Conservatives have held the court majority since 2008. A liberal win would split the court 4-4. And a mixed day on the markets, with the Dow falling 79 points, the Nasdaq up 19. This is Fox News.
Shrimp and guacamole for Lent at Subway. The all-new shrimp and guacamole combines generous portions of whole shrimp and a spread of guacamole served on freshly baked bread, paired with vegetables cut fresh daily in restaurants and sauces that are sure to excite your taste buds. Hurry in, it's only available for a limited time. Other fresh Lenten flavors include the classic tuna or the mouth-watering greatness of our seafood sensation. Don't forget the Veggie Max, a delicious and tasty vegetarian patty. Visit any of our convenient locations today. At Subway, you make it what you want.
Stone Entertainment and the stations of Choice Broadcasting proudly present the Miss and Mrs. Curvy Guam Pageant on Wednesday, April 3rd at the Sheraton Laguna Guam Resort. Tickets are $25 in advance and $35 at the door. VIP tickets are $50 in advance and $65 at the door. Tickets available at the High, Misa Zone, the Vault, and from any of the lovely curvy contestants. Doors open at 6 p.m. and the show starts at 7. Hosted by yours truly, Ryan the Mixologist, and the beautiful Liza Camacho. Special thanks to Pitbull Empire, Local Promos, Figure 8, One Punch Media, and the International Sports Center.
Republicans tell President Trump they'll get hammered in the 2020 election if they try to repeal and replace Obamacare. So he's giving up on the idea for now.
So if we get back the House, and on the assumption we keep the Senate and we keep the presidency, which I hope are two good assumptions, we're going to have a phenomenal health care.
Democrats blasting the GOP's lack of a plan.
Republicans failed to pass any of their health care plans in Congress. So they're trying to repeal health care in the courts. This reeks of desperation.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. A new football league quits before reaching the goal line on its first season.
The Alliance of American Football suspending operations Tuesday in their 8th week of a 10-week inaugural regular season, a move made by majority owner Tom Dundon against the wishes of the league's co-founders. Dundon had told USA Today last week that stalled talks with the NFL Players Association to make the Alliance a true developmental league were edging him towards folding the AAF. The Alliance already had struggled financially, needing a $250 million investment from Dundon to make payroll just weeks into the season. While suspending operations does not mean the AAF is folding, multiple reports suggest that the Spring Football League will be one and done. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And a Texas judge posts his political aspirations online. Now he's fighting to get his job back.
Bill McLeod has only been a Harris County judge for a few months, but he's no longer allowed to hear cases because the state constitution says if a judge announces his candidacy for another office, he automatically resigns from the bench. McLeod says he never heard about the provision, and despite what he posted about possibly running for the state Supreme Court, he really doesn't plan to.
Fox's Gary Baumgarten. And I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Help celebrate Earth Month with 93.3 The Point and the return of the Upcycle Mascot Showdown. Stay tuned for details on the upcoming live event and how you can support your favorite school. The Upcycle Mascot Showdown, brought to you by Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, the Agana Shopping Center, Sylvan Learning Center, PBS Guam, and 93.3 The Point.
Are you waiting too long for a home loan decision? Are you looking for a bank that understands your needs and can close your loan quickly at today's super low rates? Then come no further than Bank Pacific. Our home loan specialists are friends and neighbors from your community, and our decisions are made right here in Hagåtña. Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. EBA Bank Pacific.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, I got some good news for you today out there in our international radio listening audience. A California federal court, a district court, has ruled in favor of the Second Amendment. In California. Yeah, California, of all places. In one of the strongest judicial statements in favor of the Second Amendment to date, Judge Roger D. Benitez of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, that's places like San Diego, Chula Vista, National City, La Jolla, places like that, yeah. Determined on Friday that California's ban on commonly possessed firearm magazines violates the Second Amendment. So California wanted to criminalize the possession, importation, manufacturing, and smoking of magazines having more than 10 rounds. No, wait a minute. Not the smoking part. I got mixed up with one of my other raps there.
Yeah.
Yeah, manufacture, importation, possession.
Smoking.
But I guess you could smoke a 10-round, an 11-round magazine if you could get it to burn, right?
True.
Yeah. Okay. The case is Duncan versus Becerra. Becerra is the Attorney General of the state of California. The NRA-supported case had already been up to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit on the question of whether the law's enforcement should be suspended during proceedings on its constitutionality. Last July, a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit upheld Judge Benitez's suspension of enforcement and sent the case back to him for further proceedings on the merits. Judge Benitez rendered his opinion late Friday afternoon and handed Second Amendment supporters a sweeping victory by completely invalidating California's 10-round limit on magazine capacity. Individual liberty and freedom are not outmoded concepts, the judge declared. Even in California? Boy, that's a mouthful. In a scholarly and comprehensive opinion, Judge Benitez subjected the ban both to the constitutional analysis he argued was required by the U.S. Supreme Court and District of Columbia versus Heller. And all members of our Tall Tales posse are quite familiar with District of Columbia versus Heller. And a more complicated and flexible test the Ninth Circuit has applied in prior Second Amendment cases. Either way, Judge Benitez ruled, the law would fail. Indeed, he characterized California law as, quote, turning the Constitution upside down. He also systematically dismantled each of the state's purported justifications for the law, demonstrating the factual and legal inconsistencies of their claims. NRA-ILA Executive Director Chris Cox hailed the decision as a huge win for gun owners and a landmark recognition of what courts have too often treated as a disfavored right. Judge Benitez took the Second Amendment seriously and came to the conclusion required by the Constitution. Cox said, "The same should be true of any court analyzing a ban on a class of arms law-abiding Americans commonly possess for self-defense or other lawful purposes." Unfortunately, Friday's opinion is not likely to be the last word on the case. The state will likely appeal to the Ninth Circuit, which has proven notably hostile to the Second Amendment and past decisions. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has proven notably hostile to just about anything except left-wing propositions. However, the tide is turning. I've explained here before that the Ninth Circuit got its uber-left reputation because during the administration of Jimmy Carter, Jimmy had the opportunity to fill something like 9 seats on the court. And guess what part of the political spectrum Jimmy picked from? Yeah, you got it, the far left. But the tide is turning because Donald Trump has had the opportunity to fill 6 seats on the Ninth Circuit. Of course, he's being roundly criticized by the left for picking guess what or guess who to sit in the Ninth Circuit. Judges that are not lefties. Horror of horrors. Nevertheless, the thoroughness of Judge Benitez's analysis should give Second Amendment supporters the best possible chance for success in appellate proceedings, particularly if the case ultimately lands before the Supreme Court. In the meantime, Friday's order prohibits California from enforcing its magazine restrictions, leaving its law-abiding residents safer and freer, at least for the time being. Now, at the beginning of the case, there's a description of a mother in her home, maybe her apartment with her children, and somebody tries to break in. And if she had had a magazine smaller than 10, it might have been a successful break-in. It's a really interesting case. Once again, it's called Duncan versus Becerra. It's 88 pages long. But if you're a Second Amendment buff, it really takes apart all of the arguments that the left is likely to advance on the Second Amendment. So it's pretty good reading, although it's going to take you a while to snorkel through it. To stay up to date on the Duncan case and other important Second Amendment issues affecting California gun owners, visit, and there's a link to this website. But of course, you don't need the link. All you got to do is tune into Tall Tales every day, and we'll keep you up to date on the latest breaking news concerning the Second Amendment, who likes it, who hates it, who's trying to take it away, who's trying to water it down, etc. Okay, so from there, we go straight to the daily news. I'm sorry, straight to Demi Ikotny. And I'm going to start right out here by giving the Daily News a check mark, meaning they actually wrote an editorial today. The very editor, yeah, how about that? The very editor of the Daily News penned one herself instead of just running some drivel from USA Today and calling it an editorial. Now, I'm not telling you that, that although they finally walked up to the plate, I'm not telling you that the editor stepped into the batter's box and smacked an inside the park home run. I'm not even telling you that the editor stepped up to the plate and got a base on balls. But anyhow, the editor did step up to the plate. And here's the editorial. And the editorial will lead to a confession from yours truly. Yeah, a confession. Okay, vaping is harmful to kids. Adults must say something. The adults in our community, public officials included, need to set a high bar for inappropriate behavior and actions. In a widely circulated video on social media, 2 teens are seen in a George Washington High School classroom openly smoking electronic cigarettes. At certain school bus stops while students wait for their ride, and after school buses drop off middle or high school students, there are students who openly smoke electronic cigarettes in plain view of motorists. We as a community need to speak up that this behavior will not be tolerated. You know, this kind of reminds me that yesterday our Carl called in and asked me, after manamasangan I polabrin curmudgeon gifinu tomorrow. Sanila ko nugget nasa be facing sa guaho. Guaho dos na palabra na malamanya bihu san taklalu ibihu. So I guess what the editorial is asking here is that we all be a little bit taklalu. So we'll see what our international Facebook audience thinks about that. So we as a community need to speak up that this behavior will not be tolerated. Vaping, just like smoking, is against the law in Guam for people younger than 21. In the case of the vaping at a GW classroom that was captured on video, an adult's voice can be heard. If that's the voice of a teacher, school aide, or other staff, that should be even more concerning. Education Superintendent John Fernandez said, quote, all individuals who were identified and determined by administrators to be involved have been addressed under our disciplinary rules and regulations. So I think the way they do it at DOE at 2 a.m., if a teacher is going to be let go, they take him out into the courtyard behind the headquarters of the DOE at 2 a.m. and to a drumbeat, boom, boom, boom. The director of education comes out and strips all the buttons off the uniform of the offending teacher, and he is literally drummed out of the service. So the folks that I know in the area said they didn't hear that drum beating at 2 a.m., so apparently no one was drummed out of the Corps. However, Fernandez said all individuals have been addressed under our disciplinary rules and regulations. Back to the editorial. Vaping is harmful to kids and young adults. Say something. Information on the specific disciplinary action should be shared with the public. It's a deterrent if people know what consequences others face for unacceptable or illegal behavior, especially in a classroom. Guam is increasingly seeing more of our teens and young adults in police reports and arrest photos. Many of our teens and young adults are in distress, perhaps lacking guidance on what's right and what's wrong. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that. In some cases, calling cops when one sees an underage child smoking cigarettes or vaping in one's neighborhood might not be the solution. Maybe a concerned citizen can gently let the parents or guardian of the student know about the situation. If the neighbors aren't close to each other, maybe someone can call the mayor's office. I don't know about that. Call the mayor's office or a neighborhood church to find a way to relay a note to the parents, the adults in the student's home. The use of e-cigarettes is unsafe for kids, teens, and young adults, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, the CSC has warned. Adding, quote, nicotine is highly addictive and can harm adolescent brain development, which continues into the mid-20s. E-cigarettes can contain other harmful substances besides nicotine, according to the CDC. The adults in our community, public officials included, need to set a high bar for appropriate behavior and actions. Absent a set of standards, we can't expect our youth to do any better than the grown-ups. And going back to what I said earlier, Guam is increasingly seeing more teens and young adults in police reports and arrest photos. Many of our teens and young adults are in distress, perhaps lacking guidance on what's right and what's wrong. The adults in our community, public officials included, need to set a high bar for appropriate behavior and actions. Okay, let's just stop there for a second. Public officials need to set a high bar for appropriate behaviors and actions. You know where I'm going with this, Real Joe Cruz? That means if you take an oath and promise to do something, you do it. You don't ignore it and do something else. That means that if smoking marijuana is against the law, you don't do it. So I'm going to dredge up an old-fashioned example here. There was a time when we thought that adults in a particular community should set a good example for the children in the community. The word role model was often used, that adults in a community should be good role models. Well, are our public officials good role models, given the example that I just set? I don't think so. I don't think they are, especially adults that would partake of marijuana cigarettes in the presence of people under 21. Does not set a good example. Okay, it's time for my confession, Real Joe Cruz. Are you ready?
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah. I'm going to title this part of the program, Confessions of a Serial Jaywalker.
Oh.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I am a lifelong serial jaywalker. Yeah, my basic impatient temperament oftentimes weighs against my strolling to the nearest crosswalk, waiting for the light to turn green or to get that clever little sign that says, walk before I cross the street. I'm quite likely to stroll out into traffic and stumble across the street to the other side because, well, it's faster. Yeah.
That's more dangerous than cannabis.
Well, perhaps. Perhaps. So far, I've been pretty lucky, though. Yeah. So that's jaywalking, right? So I do it, and I'll confess that I am a serial jaywalker. Please don't turn me into the cops. So I am a serial jaywalker, but never in my life when I was in the custody, in the charge of, or in the company of children, be they children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, have I ever jaywalked. Do I have confidence in myself that I could shepherd the little ones across the street in such a manner that they wouldn't be injured? Yeah, I do. But I would never, ever set that example for them. I see jaywalking as something of a flaw, something that should not be condoned and should not be modeled for children. So I've bared my soul here to prove a point. And the point is that I think that adults should set a good example for children whenever they can. Okay, I got a phone call here already. Maybe somebody who si Tom Senior on malalati jo para jaywalking.
Ay, di ba may lalat niyo?
Oh, Diyos Marcy Lagaton.
I agree with the editorial that we adults speak up whenever we see a violation of the law. But I disagree with that part about reporting a minor to their parents or whatever. Because it's gonna create animosity between neighbors. You know, there'll be some irresponsible adults that will say, "Don't tell me how to raise my kids," etc., etc. You know how it is, right? So the best thing that the public can do if they witness minors under 21 vaping or smoking cigarette or drinking alcohol, if you have a cell phone, video it, take a photograph of it. That way those minors can be identified and then report it to the authorities. Because that's what we're paying the police force for. That's why we have a justice department, a judicial system, to enforce the law for us. We should not, we the public, we the taxpayers should not be expected to enforce the law ourselves, because we don't want to be fighting neighbor against neighbor just because a neighbor is telling his neighbor that your child is smoking marijuana, for example, or anything that's illegal. So that's my best advice. Just identify that minor through a video or photograph. Everybody has cell phones nowadays. They report it to the authorities. Whoever, if you want to go to the mayor, do it. Or if you want to go directly to the police department, do it. Okay? So that's my best advice. And it is really hypocritical for us adults nowadays to tell minors under 21, don't be vaping because it's bad for your health. And then what answer are we going to give them if they say, well, you guys do it? Aren't you adults over 21 also worry about your health? If you do it, and you don't care about your own health, why are you telling me not to do it because it's bad for my health?
Do you agree with my idea that adults ought to be setting good examples for kids, Tom?
Say that again. What's the question?
Do you agree that adults should set good examples for kids? Should be modeling good behavior for children?
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with that kind of ideology. But they already ruined it. Our lawmakers already ruined it by violating their own oath. They raise their right hand and they swear to execute the laws of the United States and all laws applicable to Guam. And what did they do right after they swear? They go turn right around and start introducing the marijuana bill. So in other words, they already ruined that bad example. They already ruined that idea, philosophy about we should set a good example. It's already all totally ruined. It's been like that for a long time. Adults nowadays, they violate the law right in front of their children. It's the same with driving down Marine Corps Drive at 50 miles per hour, and then we tell our children that just got their license, don't speed because you could crash and you could kill somebody or you could kill yourself. Then what answer are we going to give them if they say, well, you guys speed, why can't I? You guys violate the speed law, why can't I? You guys drink and drive behind the wheel, drink alcohol and drive behind the wheel, so why can't I? Don't tell me that, if we have some disrespectful kids, they'll tell their parents right back. And they say, don't tell me that that I should not drink alcohol and drive and get behind the wheel of a vehicle because you guys do it anyway.
So it comes down to setting a good example, doesn't it, Tom?
Yes, that's basically what it boils down to, is that if we adults want to raise our children the proper way, then we should not violate the law to begin with ourselves, where they can see it that we are violating the law. But it's already totally destroyed already. So we can still try it, continue trying it, continue telling our kids don't do it because it's bad for your health. Although, if they ask you why, then you guys do it, why can't I? The only thing we can do is just shut our mouth because they're bombarding us back with, which they have the right to. They have the right to question us. Why do we do it if it's bad for our health?
I got it, Tom.
All right, Bob.
Thank you, sir. So I suspect that the total outcome of this part of, well, I'll hold on to that until after the break and tell you what I think the total outcome of this part of Demi Ekotny is going to be.
Lent-friendly burgers at Chili's. Indulge in a selection of our famous burgers with a black bean patty. Black bean patties combine beans with onions, parsley, bell peppers, and cilantro. Served with dill pickles and fries. More Lenten entrees include the spicy shrimp tacos, Cajun pasta with shrimp, or grilled ancho salmon. Best of all, each entree is just $15 and comes with a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Our fresh house salad with an entree for just $15. Chili's 3 for Me Lent menu. Available for a limited time. Chili's. More life happens here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Two tales of customer service, both eye-opening for different reasons. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, one experience that made me want to scream hallelujah, and one that just made me want to scream.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Soaring over the confusion. Sometimes that means you, Real Joe Cruz.
Yeah, I do, sir. I soar every now and then.
I'm the one that does the soaring.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm the sore one.
Okay, so I think that the total output or the total product of this little chat here that we've had on the Daily News editorial, and my interjecting the thought of adults being good role models for children, setting good examples for children, elected officials being good role models and setting good examples for children. And then my confession to illustrate the point, confessing that I am a serial jaywalker. I suspect that people at the legislature have been listening to this, and they took heart in what I said. So this is what I would expect. I would expect to see the penalties for jaywalking increased, with a special factor that any talk show host caught jaywalking would have to pay a triple fine. Other than that, I think most of what I said would probably, as far as our senators are concerned, go in one earring bedangled ear and out the other. And probably the same thing would happen with the 5 men that are there. Okay, so that's the Daily News. Moving on to the Post. Our view, H-2B proposals, a good sign for our economy. Governor Lulian Guerrero speaks as you were. The federal government's recent approval of 355 H-2B petitions is good news for the island's economy, and the governor has renewed her call for companies to petition for workers. In recent years, the federal government has denied almost all of the island's H-2B petitions And in January, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security announced the Philippines would not be able to participate in the program for a year. The H-2B denials in 2017 and the ban placed on the Philippines created a shortage of labor on Guam, driving up the price of construction and halting many projects on the island, Governor Leon Guerrero said in a statement. The governor has argued that all construction errors related to the military realignment, regardless of whether the project is on a base or in a village. The governor is right. New homes and apartments improve the island's overall supply of housing. Stores, restaurants, road projects, sewer lines contribute to quality of life here for service members as well as the local population. The recent approvals provide hope that the H-2B situation won't be as dire as originally feared. Eventually, however, the island should develop skills among local and regional workers to reduce the reliance on imported labor. Eventually. Well, people have been saying that for over 50 years, and the eventually hasn't happened. Not to mention the fact that given the fact that Guam is such a small economy and such a volatile economy with high peaks and deep valleys, that we run the risk of, if we are able to handle the peaks, we're going to have a lot of folks out of work during the valleys. So then comes, I don't know which one of the folks over at the Daily News does this, but here it comes. I mean, at the Post. So long as the federal government is determining how many workers can come here and where they come from, development on the island is dependent on the decisions made in Washington, D.C., rather than on Guam. Well, that's true. And that would be true in any of the 50 states that depended on alien labor. So I know what you're trying to say there, editor, but you probably would have been better off just leaving that out, because we all kind of know how the H-2 worker setup is handled and who handles it. Okay, so weighing the two editorials, taking into consideration Jim's rule, saying, sometimes, Bob, I think you reach too far to find somebody to give that gold star to. Today, I'm going to give the gold star to the Post. I'm sorry, I misspoke. To the Daily News. And I'll explain why I gave it to the Daily News. First of all, I kind of agree with what they're saying. That is not the sine qua non of blue stars, but it doesn't hurt either. Second, they've made their voice known on a matter that requires someone with authority to speak out. That's the editorial writers at the two daily papers. And third, and perhaps most important, there's a call to action. The adults in our community, public officials included, need to set a high bar for appropriate behavior and standards. Absent a set of standards, we can't expect our youth to do any better than the grown-ups. So I don't know, maybe the folks over there at the Daily News have been working on this for several days, and that's why they kept running the boilerplate from USA Today. But anyhow, you've come out of your slump, and you finally hit the ball. I'll probably put that in the score, on the score sheet or on the scorecard as a stand-up double, at least, right? Now, when it comes to slumps, I remember back in the day when the real Joe Cruz was doing his Yogi Berra routine, and the inquiry to Yogi Berra dealt with slumps, and the real Joe Cruz said, I ain't in no slump. I just ain't hitting. as delivered as only the real Joe Cruz could deliver those lines. Okay, then we go from here to the card. I've got a short card today. I've got Moylan versus Sablon, Jim Moylan versus Angel Sablon, which is a continuation of the three-card Monte versus the Shell game. I've got the left versus Ram, and I'm finally going to get to GPD versus Chotforus, I think. So yesterday, I went through Moylan's bill, the engrossed copy of Moylan's bill, and pointed out how different it was from the bill as introduced. The bill as introduced purported to authorize the mayor's council to create rules and regulations for gambling, kind of on the supposition that if gambling were to become legal, that would be how it was done. The bill as engrossed changed that language, and the bill as engrossed legalized that gambling at the carnival. So the mayor's council is supposed to do rules and regulations. They've got 60 days. And after that, they send it to the legislature. The legislature has 30 days to approve or disapprove those rules. There's no default provision in the rules. Then there's a point of contention, bone of contention here between Moylan and Angel Sablon, who says, Angel Sablon says, there's been talk about setting up a separate place for gaming. Gaming is it's one of those euphemisms. It's kind of like talking about pro-choice instead of pro-abortion. Gaming means gambling. Executive Director Angel Sablon says there's also been talk about setting up a separate place for gambling either on the fairgrounds or somewhere nearby. It's just an alternative. We're just thinking ahead of what may happen. We also have to be cognizant of the vendor who's going to spend quite a bit of money. He's not going to just go there next to where and set up a canopy because we approve the rules and regs on the last week of May, and they have to open on the first week of June. It's not being fair to them. Now, I don't know if Angel listens to this program or not. I don't know if he knows the meaning of the word them. Because if he uses the word them, I'm tempted to say, okay, them, what's his or her name, Angel? Because he's obviously talking about one person. However, in a statement, Senator Jim Moylan says his bill specifically prevents any semblance of a 24-hour casino gaming facility, and any game of chance shall be located at the carnival grounds and not off-site. Well, I went and looked at the bill as introduced and as engrossed. Moylan's got an argument, but he doesn't have a slam dunk. Because the bill says, notwithstanding any other provision of the law, the mayor's council is authorized to draft, etc., rules and regulations to permit games of chance at the Island Fair, Liberation Day Carnival, and any other fair or carnival that the governor has issued a proclamation for. So he says at the Island Fair, Liberation Day Carnival. So that's where it's permitted. Now, Moylan used a little stronger language when he was describing his language. Moylan says his bill specifically prevents any semblance of a 24-hour gaming facility. It doesn't. That matter is just not spoken to. So there is an allowance for it at the carnival. I don't know if a clever lawyer could take that language and massage it to the point where he could read it to say, so long as it's during the period of the carnival and the governor issues a proclamation, it doesn't have to be at the carnival. Not very precise drafting draftsmanship. In any case, if that's what Senator Jim Moylan wanted, I'm not so sure that that's what Senator Jim Moylan got. Yesterday when I talked about this, I was quite cognizant of Angel Sablon's feeling about how fair he must be to them, that is, the people that bid, or the man who bids on the concession. And silly me, I thought that any concepts of fairness ought to be directed more towards the people of Guam and less towards people who bid on these concessions. But I've been out of step before. Now, news that broke on KOAM suggests to me that Moylan should have put something else into that bill. I don't know if it would have been germane or not, but there should have been a prohibition on raising salaries at the Mayor's Council. Because I'm looking at an article here that said Angel Sablon's salary was raised $22,000 per year. So his salary now goes from $76,149 to $98,937. About $100,000. Add in another 20 plus in fringe benefits like retirement and insurance, over $120,000 to be the executive director. I guess it's worth it, though. I mean, coordinating those trips to the Strawberry Festival, not just any old guy could do those things. It would take a certain amount of skill and legerdemain to make all those things happen. And then I look at the news story has a copy, the online story has a copy of the notification of personnel action providing the salary increase, and there's a block number 7, legal authority, and that is blacked out. Somebody took a black marker and blacked it out. I just wondered if Fernando Esteves was a consultant for the Mayor's Council in dealing with Freedom of Information Act requests. And then there are other things that are blacked out that to me don't make a whole lot of, I don't understand the rationale for blacking them out. But anyhow, that's a big chunk of money. So the Mayor's Council has been given the responsibility to draft rules and regulations and to basically be in charge of the carnival and the parade. And I mentioned yesterday, I don't see the wisdom in that. So I took a look at the statute and at the Mayor's Council. I don't know why we even have a Mayor's Council. But if you were to look at 5 GCA 4105, you'd find this. There is established a Mayor's Council comprised of all mayors and vice mayors. The officers are the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and sergeant-at-arms. Elections every 2 years. The council shall adopt its own rules and bylaws, provided that such rules and bylaws do not impede, restrict, or in any other way limit the authority of each mayor within his district. Such rules may be amended by 2/3 of the membership of the council. A quorum of the council shall consist of not less than 60% of the members. So we've set up, we set up this kind of quasi-parliamentary body. Could we call it legislature light? And I've never attended a council meeting, but there is a president. I suppose motions are made and I know that resolutions are adopted. But what does the commission actually do? Well, you turn to 40106, and you find the Mayor's Council shall hire 2 employees per mayor at the request of the mayor to do maintenance work in the village parks and community centers. The employees shall be unclassified employees. 2 employees shall be assigned to each village to work under the supervision of the mayor and vice mayor. That's it. So we need this whole parliamentary apparatus to hire 2 employees for each of the mayors. There's a place called the Department of Administration that does all of the hiring for most of the rest of the government of Guam, except the autonomous agencies. They've been doing it ever since. Do we really need this quasi-parliamentary body to hire 2 mayors, 2 employees for each mayor? 2 times 19 would be how much, Real Joe Cruz?
2 times 19?
Yeah.
38.
You've got a mind like a steel trap, Real Joe Cruz.
Was that right, sir?
You were correct.
Okay, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And those big numbers like that are hard if you don't take your shoes off, right? Yeah. So we have this whole quasi-parliamentary structure that statutorily has one duty, to hire 38 unclassified employees, 2 for each mayor. Okay, I'm going to break here for a second, then I'm going to come back to the Mayor's Council.
Okay, I think it's coming up soon. Yeah, we're in Route 1 and near the airport intersection, right? There, see it? What's the promo code? Look for the promo code.
Check out the Vantage Digital Billboard and reap the rewards. Catch the promo code on the screen and get $10 off your stroll ride by inputting the promo code on the Stroll Guam app.
Did you see it? You got it? I got it. You just focus on driving.
Take advantage today and take a look at Vantage Advertising's digital billboard, located on Route 1 at the airport intersection.
At Guam Regional Medical City, it is our mission to become the island's premier choice for specialty care, like cardiology, pulmonology, neurosciences, orthopedics, oncology services, and more. We aim to protect our island from heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and diabetic complications. But should you suffer from such diseases, we're ready with world-class options, both inpatient and outpatient. For more information, visit us at grmc.gu.
So, it doesn't make any sense. There is one type of public official that is responsible at the village level, and that would be the mayor. And we also have these folks in 5 of the villages called vice mayors, which means that village has 2 mayors. One gets paid more than the other. They don't run on a ticket. The mayor can't supervise the vice mayor. It's a cockeyed system at best. So if there is one person that people in the villages should be able to rely on, it ought to be the mayor of that village. The mayor of that village ought to take care of stuff like the parks, mowing grass, stray dogs, and he also ought to be the interface of the people in that village with the rest of the government of Guam. We would hope that a mayor, being an elected official, has some networking ability, and he's networked with people that can help his village, like the director of public works, the folks at Power and Water, the folks at Parks and Rec, etc. You'd think that would be what they'd be for. So they'd sort of like be the village's ambassador to the rest of the government. I don't see any reason that the mayor of any village should sit on this parliamentary body. I don't see any reason why he should concern himself with anything except what goes on within the limits of his own village. Any time spent at the mayor's council is a waste of time because it takes him away from what he ought to be doing. Even assuming that it takes a long time to hire those 2 unclassified employees for each village, do that, get it over with, and get back to work. No more grandstanding at the mayor's council. So I pulled the staffing pattern for all of the mayors, and it's an eye-opener. First of all, you go to the so-called bottom line here, and I just had it here a minute ago. Yeah, it costs us about $8 million a year for the mayor's council and the mayors. About $8 million. Are we getting our money's worth? Now let me go back to the mayor's council. We start out with an executive director who had been making $76,149. We know now that he's gone to $98,937. And then there's an administrative assistant, Mary D. Cruz Sabuan, who knocks down $53,087. And a clerk typist, Joanne Aguero Chatrus, at $29,833. Juan L.G. Mano, who is a payroll clerk 1, $37,186. Elaine Schaff, a word processing secretary 2, $33,150. I'm surprised we still have word processing secretaries in the government of Guam. That's kind of like clerk, typist, file clerk, etc. 50 years ago, I understood that, but in the digital age, maybe I just don't understand. And we have a messenger clerk, Henry Mike Farren, who makes $22,294 a year, and a property control officer, John A. Bloss, at $28,566. So altogether, in salaries, we're paying $303,288 for the mayor's council for this kind of little bitty light parliament that has a president and a vice president and et cetera. It's got a pretty nice meeting place. I've seen it on TV. Over $300,000 for that, and about $100,000 for the executive director of the mayor's council. That is an awful lot of money when you consider what it is that they do, or in the case of Sherlock Holmes and the mystery, what is it, Real Joe Cruz?
It's what they didn't do.
What they don't do, yeah. Okay, so and that figure I gave you there, $303,000, of course, that doesn't take into consideration benefits. Benefits include another $84,613 for retirement, another $3,960 for a different kind of retirement, as you were. So that brings it up to 87. So altogether, we're talking a little shy of $400,000 for the mayor's council. Does the mayor's council take care of parks? No. Does the mayor's council take care of anything? Well, they have a statutory duty to hire 2 unclassified employees for each mayor. Doesn't seem like a very good use of our money. That's why I think that Jim Moylan could have added a little something to his bill about the carnival, assuming that it would have been germane. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with the Mayor's Council right after the big halftime show that we have every day. And then I'm going to go to Rahm Emanuel versus the left.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Getting help from Mexico. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Trump pledges to close the border with Mexico, even if it hurts the economy.
I'm ready to close it if I have to close it.
Border officials say they encountered or apprehended about 100,000 immigrants at the border in March alone. And now the president seems to be easing up a bit on the threat of closing the border, now that Mexico is stepping up.
They've apprehended over 1,000 people today at the southern border, their southern border.
And Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen plans to travel to the border this week to figure out how to implement any new plans. A Chinese woman faces federal charges after making her way into President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida.
The Secret Service says Yujing Zhang tried to get into the president's club carrying 2 Chinese passports and gadgetry, including a laptop, external hard drive, and several cell phones. She also had a thumb drive that contained malware. When it was determined she was not a club member, she was removed. Secret Service took her for questioning when she became argumentative.
Fox's Gernal Scott. The woman had 2 Chinese passports, several mobile phones, a laptop, and a thumb drive with malware. Secret Service says she was never near the president. Chicago makes mayoral history twice. The city becomes the country's largest city to elect an African-American woman mayor. Lori Lightfoot is also the first openly gay mayor for the city.
Where it doesn't matter who you love, just as long as you love with all your heart.
The former federal prosecutor easily winning a runoff election to lead the nation's 3rd largest city, and she's promising to rid City Hall of corruption and help low-income and working-class people. This is Fox News.
Are you waiting too long for a home loan decision? Are you looking for a bank that understands your needs and can close your loan quickly at today's super low rates? Then come no further than Bank Pacific. Our home loan specialists are friends and neighbors from your community, and our decisions are made right here in Hagåtña. Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Eva Bank Pacific.
Laddie Stone Entertainment and the stations of Choice Broadcasting proudly present the Miss and Mrs. Curry Guam Pageant on Wednesday, April 3rd at the Sheraton Laguna Guam Resort. Tickets are $25 in advance and $35 at the door. VIP tickets are $50 in advance and $65 at the door. Tickets available at the High, Misa Zone, the Vault, and from any of the lovely curvy contestants. Doors open at 6 p.m. and the show starts at 7. Hosted by yours truly, Ryan the Mixologist, and the beautiful Liza Camacho. Special thanks to Pitbull Empire, Local Promos, Figure 8, One Punch Media, and the International Sports Center.
A second chemical plant fire near Houston in just weeks, and this one turns deadly.
The Harris County Sheriff says 1 person has been killed. 2 people were life-flighted out of the Kimco plant with injuries. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said a colorless gas called isobutylene initially started a chemical fire at the plant that led to an explosion. Schools in the area were told to shelter in place, but the sheriff said they were working with school officials to coordinate getting everyone out of the area. One worker told a Houston TV station that before the explosion, they were in the process of being evacuated because of a reported leak. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
About 2 weeks ago, a fire broke out at a petrochemical facility in Deer Park, which is south of Houston. Facebook says it may change where you find news on its platform.
In a Facebook panel discussion shared online, CEO Mark Zuckerberg reveals the company is considering creating a dedicated news section to feature high-quality, trustworthy content which would be free for users. Zuckerberg floats the idea of paying publishers to feature their content, stressing how having a direct relationship with them could give Facebook reps a better way to verify it as credible. The potential pitch comes after the European Union passed a slew of digital copyright laws which give publishers the right to negotiate licenses with social media sites using their content. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
And the Eagles are back.
On the dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair.
The band announcing it's returning to the stage to perform its 1976 album, Hotel California, in its entirety for the first time. Founding members Don Henley, Joe Walsh, Timothy B. Schmidt will be joined by the late Glenn Frey's son, Deacon, as well as country singer Vince Gill. The tour's only North American dates are in late September in Las Vegas. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
The GCC Votech Class of '79 is
back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th, at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittigwa St. Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. B-Bus 79ers.
Hey, are you ready to afford the good life? For example, cooking in a gourmet kitchen that is as amazing as your skills. Or how about paying off tuition? Or maybe expanding your home to make room for your parents. Live beyond your dreams, within your means, with a low-rate home equity line of credit from First Hawaiian Bank. To learn more or to apply, visit any branch or FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank. It all starts with yes. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
So our new governor, Lilian Guerrero, has promised that she's going to streamline the government and economize, get more bang for the buck. And so far, a couple of notable events have occurred since Lou started. I just went through the whole mayor's council and Angel Sablon's salary increase of $22,000. So a really good place to start, Lilian Guerrero, would be with the mayors. There's so many things wrong with that system. One of our callers pointed out that, you know, the mayor of Jigu and the mayor of Humatak draw the same pay. Humatak is the biggest. I mean, Jigu is probably 100 times bigger than Humatak. Then we've had the problem with the Strawberry Festival, with mayors refusing to mow the school lawns, the whole kerfuffle over the carnival, etc. This quasi-parliamentary body called the Mayor's Council. So well-drafted legislation doing away with the Mayor's Council, prescribing the duties of each individual village mayor, and setting a decent salary schedule for the people that work in those endeavors would be a real good start towards fulfilling one of your campaign promises. And at the same time, perhaps asking for legislation that would prohibit these quasi-autonomous agencies from giving their employees runaway pay increases. Now, we had Angel Sablon getting a $22,000 increase. That kind of slipped under the radar last February. I think it was probably only the eagle eyes of Kevin that brought this to light. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even known about it. It happened in February. Papers just got cut. Along the same lines, the Guam Election Commission, another group of, another quasi-parliamentary body, submitted a budget to the legislature that would cause the increase in salaries of their employees by $98,000 a year. 13 people, $98,000 a year. They're all unclassified. None of them have the expectation of continuing employment. There's no salary increments. There's no promotions, etc. One would speculate that you get a job working for the Election Commission by going to someone in your party and having your party's representative on the commission stump for you. I don't know if that's how it works. I'm speculating, but I can't see how else it could work. They're not competitive positions. And I don't think we've ever had any trouble at all filling vacancies at the Election Commission. So a salary increase is, under any circumstances, is completely out of order. Not to mention the fact that 13 people are able to conduct the primary and general elections every 2 years. That's enough to do it. Well, there's no election this year. So we're paying the same amount of money in a non-election year that we pay in an election year. It would seem that a sound business decision would be to take the commission down to the number of people necessary to keep the lights on between elections. I suppose there's a little bit of administrative cleanup, but to keep 13 people on the payroll and then give them a $100,000 raise at a time when, you know, we are wringing our hands about our horrible fiscal conditions, and then we have two boards or commissions or councils that pull off this kind of shenanigans. And apparently our governor and our legislature are just going to stand by and say, well, yeah, that's too bad. So both of those things cry out for action now. I have submitted a call to action to the governor of Guam, who has the ability to line item veto any items in an appropriation. So she could use her line item veto to take those salary increases out of the budget of the Election Commission and reduce that appropriation by about $100,000. And I don't want to hear anybody say, well, it's only $100,000. You should never use the word only in front of any dollar amount. To me, $100,000 is a lot of money. And of course, we stop to think about where it would be of good use elsewhere in our government: hospital, police department, schools. So this is a call to action for the governor to step forward and get this let's give everybody a raise idea under control before it breaks the Treasury. Okay, so much for Moylan versus Sablon. And I'm going to turn again to the left versus Rahm Emanuel. I know I've talked about this before, but I can't resist. This all arises from the Jussie Smollett incident, where Jussie Smollett allegedly hired a couple of people to stage this event that allowed Jussie to make a complaint to the police that he'd been beaten up by a couple of white supremacists wearing "Make America Great" hats. You know, so Jussie was playing it for all the tricks, the race card, bringing Donald Trump into it, which is a sure winner with the left, whether Trump had anything to do with it or not. Just the mere mention of his name gets 3 or 4 buckets up on the scoreboard with the left. So it turns out, according to news reports, that it was all a hoax, that Jussie paid the 2 guys to help him stage this event. There was no noose, there was no MAGA hats, there were no white supremacists, although Jussie's lawyer alleged that maybe these guys were in, quote, whiteface. Yeah. In other words, they used some kind of makeup to make their complexion appear to be, well, actually beige, because we went through that yesterday with Jim Selman's column about who's white and who's not white and what does white mean, and maybe it's something that we don't need to use so often. So when this all came down, the chief of police of the city of Chicago was outraged. The mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, was outraged. Now, Chicago is in Cook County, and in Cook County, like almost every other state, there would be city cops and county sheriff's deputies and even state troopers, but the prosecutions are usually done at the county level by an elected official. In some states, that elected official is called a district attorney. In Illinois, that person is called a state's attorney. So the state's attorney in Chicago, as you were in Cook County, who had the responsibility of prosecuting Smollett, dismissed all the charges, sealed the records, and said, well, it's okay because he said he'd forfeit his $10,000 bond to the city. And besides that, there was a community service. Well, it turned out that his community service was done before he committed the crimes. He did 17 hours with Jesse Jackson's PUSH organization. So I guess he put a little money in the bank there. So just in case he committed a crime, he would have the community service out of the way. So the outrage was extreme when Kim Foxx dismissed his case. And Rahm Emanuel and the chief were leading the outrage. And when this happened, I said, the left is not going to let this go. They're going to be all over Rahm Emanuel, although Rahm is one of theirs. He has been a lefty since he was in the House of Representatives and when he was Obama's chief of staff. So the Chicago Tribune ran this column by a columnist named Darlene Glanton. And Darlene's column says, Mayor Rahm Emanuel's anger over Jussie Smollett's case isn't about justice. It's about revenge. Humiliated and angry that Smollett is getting to walk away free, the mayor and police declared the actor guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of staging his own racial and homophobic attack. Emanuel has set his sights on revenge. A day after having a temper tantrum in front of the national spotlight, Emanuel demanded that Smollett reimburse the city for overtime costs of police investigation that led to a 16-count indictment of disorderly conduct. We all know that Chicago will never see a penny of that money, especially with a lame duck governor who has one foot out the door, Darlene says. But Emanuel likes to talk big. He wants everybody to know he's no pushover. He's going to make Smollett pay one way or another. And the mayor doesn't care if he takes the city or the entire nation, for that matter, down in the process. Wait a minute. Nobody thinks his over-the-top reaction to state prosecutors dropping the charges against Smollett has anything to do with justice, do they? Nobody gullible enough to believe his grandstanding is about doing what's best for Chicago, right? How could anybody think that when the state's attorney washes out these cases for no reason? You know, ordinarily, a plea bargain requires what's called allocution. That is, that the person who's engaged in the police, in the plea bargain, has to go into open court and plead and describe what it was that he did to get him before the court in the first place. Well, I'm going to let Jesse and Ram rest for a minute. I'm going to see what Ken has to say. Good afternoon, Ken.
Yeah, I apologize. I was trying to get in earlier while you were talking about illegal pay raises because I just sent a FOIA, which I copied you on, to the Mayor's Council of Guam to get their documentation regarding the most recent promotion of Angel Sablon to $99,000.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to understand how this position jumped from $45,000 2 years ago to $99,000 today. considering that he only manages a staff of 6 people, has no villages that he's responsible for, literally has nothing that he's responsible as far as I can tell, other than making sure there's tuna fish sandwiches and soup on the days they have meetings.
Don't forget the Strawberry Festival, Ken.
Oh, yeah, and traveling to the Philippines to make sure that strawberries do still grow there. It just boggles my mind that in a time when government of Guam is skating on the edge of financial collapse, that the Mayor's Council of Guam would decide that the services provided by Angel Sablan are so irreplaceable, so valuable, that they need to pay him more than the governor of Guam. I mean, I can't wait to see what duties they've added to his position since he was making $45,000 a year to justify more than doubling his salary in just a couple of years. And the fact that, this is like the senators. Here we have the Mayor's Council of Guam giving themselves pay raises, just like the senators did. So this is something that I think that everybody should be concerned about, because this could be the start of a whole new round of illegal pay raises. I mean, I still don't understand how a person who's not managing a village, let alone Dedido or Jigo, which are the 2 largest villages, can justify earning more than the governor of Guam, the lieutenant governor of Guam, the director of administration, and all those other people. Especially in view of our financial situation. And like you talked about with Guam, at least with the Guam Election Commission, they went through the legislature. So there's some accountability there. Who watches what the mayors do with the money?
Good point, Ken. I don't think anybody does.
Well, that's something that needs to stop, because when we get right down to it, I'm thinking back to just a little over a year ago, when the mayors were refusing to cut the lawns in the schools, unless they got more money. And then it turns out in the audit report, they are getting more money. They're getting nearly $6 million from the Highway Trust Fund, specifically for maintaining the lawns and grounds in the schools. And when you look at the audit of the Mayor's Council of Guam, you can see how much each village is supposed to get from that $6 million based on the number of schools in their area. So it turns out the whole time the mayors were threatening to, not provide the services unless they got money for it, they were actually getting money for it. So I think what we need to do is we need to take a closer look at the Mayor's Council of Guam, because I think it's an organization we don't need. It would be very hard for it to justify why it even exists, other than as an excuse to appoint somebody and give them a large salary as a reward for political favors.
Seems right to me, Ken. The only statutory function they have is to appoint, to hire 2 employees for each mayor. I don't think you need an executive director and 6 other employees and a nice meeting hall and all those trappings just to hire 38 people.
Yeah, so when we sit down there, and I'm like I said, I just started looking at the audit report from the Office of Public Accountability. I think when we take a look at what is being spent on the Mayor's Council of Guam itself and the needs of the villages, I think one of the best things we can do to improve service at the village level is to eliminate the Mayor's Council of Guam and then distribute the money to the villages directly.
Agreed.
So I'll be looking into that, and as soon as I get the response on the FOIA, I'll be sure to share it with the international radio listening audience of Tall Tales.
Well, I'm sure everyone out there in our international radio listening audience is looking forward to that, Ken. So thanks a lot for giving us a heads up.
You're welcome.
Hey, so long. Interesting. Well, good for Ken. What is that one that you oftentimes talk about with respect to laws and constitutions, Real Joe Cruz?
Oh, being an active and informed citizen. It's not just a right, it's a duty.
Yeah, put a little more emphasis in it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
It is not just a right, it's a duty to be an active and informed citizen.
Okay, would you say that Ken is living up to that duty?
Absolutely.
Complying with his duty? All right.
Yep.
Good. All right. Okay, well, back to Jussie Smollett and Rahm Emanuel. So this columnist in the Chicago Tribune, which is a big paper in Chicago, nobody's gullible enough to believe Rahm's grandstanding is about doing what's best for Chicago, right? Of course, everybody realizes this is all about Emanuel's insatiable need to control. Don't think for a moment that the mayor wasn't working behind the scenes dictating exactly how the Smollett case would unfold to the public. His script fell apart when prosecutors abruptly decided to change the narrative. Well, that's putting it politely. Prosecutors decided to change the narrative. In other words, they decided to give the guy a pass on a 14-count indictment. In case anyone isn't familiar with Chicago politics, let me break down what happened last week. In our city, the mayor is actually a dictator. God forbid anyone make a move without his knowledge. He's the judge, jury, and decider-in-chief, according to this columnist. Kim Foxx, who was elected Cook County State's attorney just 3 years ago, is relatively new to big league Chicago politics. Maybe she didn't get the memo. Or maybe she forgot that state's attorneys are supposed to be pawns of City Hall, willing to crash and burn along with the mayor. Fox's predecessor, Anita Alvarez, didn't mind putting her career on the line to help Emanuel and the Chicago Police Department cover up one of the most blatant police murders in our city since the days of Al Capone. And then there's a description of that. Alvarez lost her re-election because of the backlash. Emanuel very well would have lost too if he'd had the guts to run. Emanuel needs everyone to know that, although his days are numbered, he's still very much in charge. Fox, however, seemed to think she could just walk into her first term and make a major decision to drop all charges against Smollett without so much as giving the mayor a heads up. This is the classic example of the straw man fallacy. And the straw man actually is a man named Rahm Emanuel. Rahm wasn't the only one that paid attention to this. It made national news when Kim Foxx washed out the 16-count indictment. And as I mentioned earlier, ordinarily in a plea bargain, the defendant comes before the court, pleads guilty, allocutes, that is, he said what it was that he did in order to get indicted, and then we go from there to the terms of the plea agreement. But Kim didn't even bring him in for an arraignment. She dismissed it right after the indictment was handed down for no reason at all. And now this columnist wants to blame it all on Rahm Emanuel, the straw man. In Emanuel's world, that's an unforgivable offense. Fox is going to have to pay right along with Smollett. Well, maybe she should. That's not what we expect of prosecutors. So what does the mayor do? As soon as he hears the news, he labels the prosecutor's move a, quote, whitewashing of justice, insinuating that something fishy happened behind the scenes. You know, why would anyone think that? Why would anyone think that something fishy happened behind the scenes just because a prosecutor threw out a 16-count indictment? And then, of course, we find that Kim Fox said, I've recused myself because I've talked to the family, and I also talked to the former chief of staff of Hillary Clinton, so I'm going to recuse myself and let my deputy handle it. Well, then it turns out she didn't recuse herself at all. She just let her deputy take the fall, because had she recused herself for a conflict, the whole office would have been recused, unless perhaps something that we used to call a Chinese wall were built between her and the rest of the prosecutors in her office. But she didn't recuse herself. She just said that because it sounded good. Okay, well, we're coming up to the home stretch. I didn't notice that Jack Hattick suited up today. I don't know if he's even out in the bleachers. Okay, well, after the seventh inning stretch here, we'll finish up with Ram, and then I'll go to Mark Chotfrus.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Get a Coke 12-pack for only $3.49 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a dozen extra-large eggs for only 49 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a case of Circle K water for only $2.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Scanning the center field bleachers, the right field grandstand, the left field grandstand, the home plate grandstand. No sighting of Jack Hattick today. So when we do the score for today, next to Jack's name, we're going to put a K. Do you know what that means, Rojo Cruz?
Callan missing?
K is the symbol when you're doing a baseball scorecard. K is a symbol for strikeout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Jack struck out today. Sorry, Jack. Okay, back to Rahm Emanuel. So what does Rahm do? As soon as he hears the news, he labels the prosecutor's move a whitewashing of justice, insinuating that something fishy happened behind the scenes, though he has not an ounce of evidence to prove it. The mayor, who has laughed in the face of accountability, then went on national TV promoting the conspiracy theory, getting the nation more riled up and drawing the attention of a manipulator even more masterful than he, Donald Trump. Now, this is the political tactic known as deflect. So Donald here is deflecting the blame from Jussie first to Rahm Emanuel, and then, of course, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, Donald Trump is kind of the Troy Torres of national politics. You remember when Ray Tenorio was prosecuted for the Glock party? Who did he blame it on?
Troy.
He blamed it. It's all Troy Torres' fault. Yeah. Smollett's alleged attack combined racism and homophobia to become one of the most divisive situations America has seen in a while. There was no way the president was going to sit this one out. He longed to be front and center, directing the cast and setting the stage for what would be the greatest production since his coming into power. All he needed was an entry. Emmanuel opened the door and let him in. It should not have been surprising to the mayor that Trump would try to step into the Smollett mess. The president tweeted Thursday that the FBI and his own Justice Department would review the case, calling it outrageous and an embarrassment to our nation. How dare anyone say that? As I mentioned before, if this is identity politics, it's not what happened that counts. It's the people involved and their backgrounds. So you have to understand the backgrounds and the oppression that the people involved have been subjected to. And there is a hierarchy of identities, and Rahm Emanuel is right up there near the top. He's an African American and he's homosexual, so that means you're not supposed to criticize him. The president tweeted Thursday that the FBI and his own Justice Department would review the case, calling it outrageous. We have grown accustomed to watching Trump throw temper tantrums when he feels threatened by forces beyond his control. We are used to seeing him react with venom and vindictiveness when someone gets in his way. It would have been refreshing if, during Emmanuel's final days in office, the mayor could have shown the nation what it looks like for a leader to respond gracefully when things don't go exactly the way he thinks they should. But instead of behaving with dignity, Emmanuel went on a fiery rampage, fueling the flames of anger and pulling us apart. Emmanuel could not possibly think that a $130,000 check from Smollett would repair the damage done to this city. But the mayor at least could claim a victory. Lucky for Chicago, though, in a few weeks, he'll be gone. So that's identity politics in Chicago, and patting myself on the back. I called this one as soon as Emmanuel spoke out. I said, the left will be on him. Doesn't matter that what he's saying, the truth or falsity of what he's saying doesn't matter. It's where he sits in the identity politics spectrum that really counts. So nowadays, when it comes to identity politics, tolerance is really important. And everything requires tolerance, except for the person who comes along and points out that some things are intolerable. And that kind of an attitude cannot be tolerated. Ask Rahm Emanuel. Okay, so from there I go to GPD versus Chotfris. This has been on the calendar for quite a while. On the card, I just never got to it. Mark Chotfris is the former colonel in the Guam Police Department. And he got into something of a kerfuffle July 4, a couple years ago. He was suspended and then terminated. He appealed to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission reversed his suspension. His suspension, and sustained the termination by the chief of police at the time. You remember what the name of the chief of police was at that time?
I think it was another Joe Cruz.
Another Joe Cruz, yeah. They're everywhere, these Joe Cruzes.
This is true.
Yeah, but it wasn't you.
No, sir.
Yeah. So defense attorney Randall Cunliffe calls, as you were, former Guam Police Department Colonel Mark Chotfris, who was fired for insubordination in February 2017, won't get his job back, according to the Civil Service Commission, which Thursday evening voted 5-0 to reject his adverse action appeal. Now, this article doesn't mention what action Rory Respicio is going to take with respect to this, so I suppose until Rory speaks, we really won't know what to expect. Police Chief Cruz fired Chotfris for insubordination after Chotfris disobeyed the chief's orders and spoke publicly about a December 24, 2016 incident in which Chotfris intervened when police officers responded to reported fireworks in Chotfris's home village of Agate. The incident, which was captured on a responding officer's body camera, also resulted in criminal charges against Chotfris for obstructing governmental function and official misconduct. Now, he's going to go on trial, I believe, in June. That was just in the paper. His trial last November ended in a mistrial, but prosecutors have said they will not make a plea deal and are moving forward with a second trial. Chotfris last year won a separate civil service appeal on his related demotion from colonel to major. The commission voted in his favor after the government made a procedural error during his civil service hearing and failed to call any witnesses. Fair to say he won on a technicality? I guess. But Thursday's decision means his demotion victory is moot, as he is no longer employed by the department. According to the adverse action notice for insubordination, Chotfris met with the police chief and during that meeting was ordered to refrain from discussing the incident with anyone because of an administrative investigation into the Agate video. But Chotfris on December 28 spoke publicly about the incident in interviews with radio host Jesse Lujan and with Pacific News Center, the adverse action states. He spoke about it again during a December 29 radio interview on K57, the adverse action states. Chotfris then lied to investigators, the adverse action states, telling them he had the chief's permission to speak about the issue. He reportedly said it was part of his job to talk to the media about department matters. The Attorney General's office on Monday filed a memorandum with the Civil Service Commission in advance of Chotfris's Thursday hearing, summarizing the reason for Chotfris's termination. At the time that the employee disobeyed the chief, he was facing an administrative investigation for his own conduct during the fireworks fiasco, the Attorney General's office stated. By defying the chief in a very public way in pursuit of his own desire to defend himself, the employee chose to place his own personal needs above that of the department and its personnel. Chotfris last month lost a separate effort to avoid his termination, arguing the Civil Service Commission failed to grant him a hearing within 120 days. Commission members in February voted 6-0 to reject that argument. So how about this? Can you fire somebody because he speaks to the media? What about the First Amendment? Let me get out my copy of the Constitution here and read the First Amendment. It's right there next to the Second Amendment. It's easy to find. Yeah, the First Amendment. I'll edit it. Congress shall make no law prohibiting, as you were, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press. No law, okay? So what about Chotfris, a police officer? Can't he speak to the media about what's going on in the police department? And I'm going to tell you that the answer is probably not. And the reason is this, that there are three really important cases: Pickering versus Board of Education, Connick versus Myers, and Garcetti versus somebody, that make it clear that the government, when acting as an employer, is not under the same First Amendment constraints as the government as acting as government. So what it comes down to is this. Pickering was a school teacher, and I think it was Peoria, Illinois, maybe Peking, Illinois. And that town, the school board there, was attempting to float a bond issue. And Pickering made several public statements about the board and the way they were handling the bond issue, none of which made the board very happy. some of which weren't even true. So the school district fired Pickering. I guess the charge was insubordination. And that was a case that found its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, paraphrasing, who better to speak out about the affairs in a public school system than a teacher? So long as he was speaking as a private citizen on his own time about matters of public concern, he cannot be disciplined, can't be fired. So they put him back to work. Pickering versus Board, a landmark case for probably everybody over the GFT. The next case in that series came along was Connick versus Myers. Harry Connick was the district attorney in Orleans Parish, Louisiana, the father of the musician named Harry Connick Jr., by the way. And Connick perhaps was a strict boss, and one of his assistants didn't like the way Connick was running the show, so she circulated a questionnaire about the leadership of Harry Connick. When Harry Connick found out about it, he fired her. And that case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, if what the employee is doing relates to his job and it has a disruptive effect, and the employer determines that the effect is too disruptive, termination lies. So Myers didn't get her job back. Then the last case, Garcetti versus, I can't remember the name. Garcetti was a district attorney for LA County. And the way the case finally turned out is this, that if an employee speaks publicly about his own job grievances, my boss is a this, that, or the other thing, or the way my boss schedules the employees schedules me is unfair, or my boss gives me too much work to do and he doesn't give somebody else enough work to do, no protection. If the employee on his own time is speaking about the operations of the department in general, and management determines that it's not disruptive, then he is protected. So when Chotfris says, in this particular case, Chotfris is what's called hoist with his own petard. Chotfris lied to investigators, telling them he had the chief's permission to speak about the issue. He reportedly said it was part of his job to talk to the media about department matters. Well, if he's talking to the media about department matters involving the Mark Chotfris case, then in accordance with Garcetti, he's not protected. So my final analysis here is that when the Civil Service Commission is finished, when no doubt Randy Cunliffe, Mark Chotfris' lawyer, will appeal this to the Superior Court, but my prediction is that the Superior Court will sustain the decision of the Civil Service Commission. They did put it pretty nicely in their statement. By defying the chief in a very public way in pursuit of his own desire to defend himself, the employee chose to place his own personal needs above that of the department and its personnel. So I think Mark Chotfris is going to remain, that's it, Garcetti versus Ceballos. I forgot about Ceballos. Somebody posted Ceballos' name there. Jose Flynn. Thank you, Jose Flynn. Okay, so finally I got to Mark Chotfris, and I've still got about 10 more minutes of program here. And I don't have the real Joe Cruz primed to do any one of his comic routines, so I'm going to have to go to one of the features that I've put away here for quite some time.
It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu, now back at King's Restaurants. Your tasty favorites like salmon curry, orange shrimp, and whole deep-fried parrotfish will have you swimming with flavors from the sea. Our fried rice with salmon or shrimp will make ordering easy and delicious. It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu. Available all day, every day, just for Lent, and only at King's.
Experience the Take Care difference. Take Care members can count on accessing a high-quality, credentialed network of on-island providers, including the convenient one-stop FHP Health Center and Urgent Care, access to an extensive off-island network of providers, and the island's largest offering of free fitness classes and health education programs. You can count on Take Care to deliver comprehensive, accredited insurance coverage and quality health care when and where you need it. Take Care. Our island, your health plan. Learn more at takecareasia.com.
So here we are, heading down the home stretch on Tall Tales. I've got about 8 more minutes here before we listen to that beautiful song called Ravel's Bolero. And I've got a feature here that I've been hanging on to for quite some time called The Rebirth of Socialism. And for those of you out there in our Facebook audience, I think this pretty well demonstrates what I'm going to be talking about. That hammer and sickle, the symbol of international communism. And I'm going to start out with an article that I read way back in December called What Socialism Can and Can't Do, written by a socialist. And the socialist tells us this: socialism seeks to transform societies and persons, bringing them to a higher stage of social justice and personal and ethical responsibility than is possible under capitalist economic systems. So, are you ready to be brought to a higher stage of personal and ethical responsibility than is possible under the system you're living in now? Are you ready to embrace socialism? Because according to this author, Charles McKelvey, professor in South Carolina, that's what socialism can do. So that kind of sets the tone here for the rebirth of socialism. And if you've been following national politics, you know that there is a tremendous embrace of socialism that I frankly thought I'd never see. I thought that the world had finally wised up that socialism is an unworkable system. But, you know, we've got AOC and her Green New Deal. We've got Bernie Sanders. And in the last election, a lot of people felt the burn. Bernie did a whole lot better than you would have thought an old, bald white man could have done in national politics. And the whole Democrat Party, or most of the Democrat Party, has taken a hard left to embrace socialism. So Why is that happening? How could that possibly be? How could people be aware of Cuba, North Korea, the Soviet Union, all of the communist bloc countries, East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, on and on and on. How could anyone possibly think that socialism is a workable system? I forgot to mention Venezuela. Very good example. Well, here's some answers. With the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, people were saying that socialism had been consigned to the dustbin of history. Free market capitalism and liberal democracy were so ascendant that people were talking about the end of history, in the sense that the wars and ideological conflicts that made up so much of history were over with. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics ceased to exist as of Christmas Day, 1991. Just 28 years later, socialism is back in vogue. Among Democrats, 57% have a favorable impression of socialism. Yeah, I can understand that. With a minority of 47% saying that about capitalism. Two avowed socialists, Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, dominate the party. Almost half of millennials, 48%, identify themselves as socialists. A big article in the latest New Yorker magazine entitled "Pinkos Have More Fun" chronicles the way socialism has become fashionable among cool people. Well, I'm pretty uncool, that's for sure. Of course, I am anyhow, right, Real Joe Cruz?
True.
Thank you very much. Among New York's creative underclass, cash poor but culturally potent, it feels like everything but socialism is now irrelevant. I've noticed that there's a kind of baseline assumption in the room that everyone is a socialist. And if they're not, it's because they're an anarchist. We got our own share of anarchy right here on the island. Cool-headed Obaman technocracy is out. Stringent left-wing moral clarity is in. And while this atmospheric shift is felt more acutely among the left literary crowd, it is also bled into the general discourse, such as that Teen Vogue is constantly flacking against capitalism. A magazine called Teen Vogue, constantly flacking against capitalism. And one of the most devastating insults in certain corners of the internet is to call someone a neoliberal. Well, I want to continue on this vein as time goes on. I see this as a real peril, not only nationally, but right here on our island. And as time goes on, I will be explaining what I think the local dimension of the rebirth of socialism is. But for now, it's been a great day. Glad you all tuned in. I'll see everyone out there in our international radio listening audience tomorrow. Adios.